welcome back. Today I'll be doing my May wrap-up, and I got through about 14 books, so I did really good this month, and I also managed to do 12 reviews out of those 14, so a lot better than I did the previous month. And so I'm going to hope to keep this fairly short. I'm just going to kind of whip on through it. The first two books I did not do reviews on because they were parts of series, and this is the third one in the series by Cidney Swanson, entitled Losing Mars. First one was Saving Mars and Defying Mars. And I really liked this one. I thought this was going to be the conclusion to the trilogy, and then, of course, I realized it wasn't a trilogy because it clearly says series. So I'm disappointed to find out that I couldn't wrap this up, but I'm not disappointed to find out that there's going to be another book. But I am disappointed to find out I have to wait for it, so take your pick. But again, great storyline, great writing. I love the character development. I see a lot more growth in our main character, Jess, and I can't wait to see what happens next. And the Chancellor, who's like leading the... She's like the main protagonist in this book, is just unbelievable. Ooh, hate her. Anyway, I gave it 4 stars. The next one is Death Note 4, and this contains volumes 7 and 8 in the Death Note manga series. There are 2 new characters within this book that are really intriguing. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with them. Again, more Trouble for Light coming, and more drama and everything. Love the book, love the series. I gave it 5 stars. The next book is by Maggie Stiefvater, The Raven Boys, and I liked it so much better than her other series, and it has a lot really good pacing, really intrigue. I like the main characters, the girl who comes from a family of psychics, and the boy who's sort of searching for a supposedly sleeping Welsh king, and who will grant him a wish. Curious to see how that is all going to play out. I love the characters, were very well written, a lot of backstory for them, very intriguing, interesting revelation throughout the story, which I won't get into, but I definitely recommend it. I can't wait to pick up book 2, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next one was a graphic novel, and it's pretty thin. It's called Anya's Ghost, and Vera Brosgol is the author. I love the illustrations of this. Everything is kept really simple and crisp and clear, and not cluttered, which I don't like when there's a lot of clutter within a comic. About a girl who falls down a well, finds a ghost who becomes her sort of best friend. It's kind of a moral to this story, really interesting. The ghost is creepy as all heck. Loved the book, gave this one 5 stars. Then a book I'd seen several people have, everybody seemed like has read it. And it's an adult sort of fantasy, and that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Love, love, love this book. Love the world building. Love the circus. The whole idea of a contest between 2 magicians that don't really seem to know who their opponent is, know what the rules are, or know what the ultimate outcome, or how do they know if they've won. All that mystery was so intriguing. It was interesting, kind of having that unveiled to us, that it's just unveiled to the main characters. I love the way the author brings the reader into the story itself. Very interesting little passages for that, and just very well described to the point where you could almost smell and taste the food yourself from the circus. You could see the acts. Very, very well written. Highly recommend this one. I gave it 5 stars. The next 2 books are from a middle grade series, and it was the first book I pulled out of my TARDIS TBR jar, and that was Ulysses Moore. The first book is The Door to Time. Book 2 is The Long Lost Map. Beautifully illustrated books. They're written by Pierdomenico Baccalario. It's an Italian author, so these were translated actually into many languages, as I found out. It's quite a big series, and I'm still trying to track down the other books. I think only first 4 have been translated into English. And the first one is, sets the story. It's a middle grade. There's 2 twins and their parents. They move into this house owned by Ulysses Moore, fully furnished. Everything's left behind. Nestor is sort of the keeper of the house. And this book is like packed with clues and adventure. I love when there's like a creepy house and something to uncover in there. Those are like some of my favorite stories for middle grade books. I feel like I'm one of the kids exploring everything. So this book does a lot of like the setup for the series, so a little bit less action happening. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a sequel where they end up kind of traveling back in time to ancient Egypt. They're sort of stuck there, having to find a map so they can return home. And there's more action. An unexpected guest from their own time shows up, made it even more interesting. It had a better action, more fast-paced. I gave this one 5 stars. Another book I read was Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. Excellent, excellent book. It's middle grade. The book itself is full of really lovely illustrations, some of them full page spread, about a boy that ends up being raised by spirits in a graveyard. He's given sort of the freedom of the graveyard, so he can come and go secret, and he can disguise himself, almost disappear from view. All sorts of things he learns as he grows up in this cemetery. And it was really interesting. The beginning of the book, his parents are murdered, so it begins quite horrifically. This murderer is still out there, so he has to sort of stay within the grounds of the cemetery where he can be protected. And each chapter in this book seems to be like a mini adventure for our main character, and you wonder what the ultimate outcome will be with this murderer still kind of hunting him down. It's really well written, really intriguing, and typical Neil Gaiman fashion, really interesting characters. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read a graphic novel that I happened to pick up at a comic book shop just on a whim. Sounded kind of interesting. The cover looked interesting. It's by Matt Kindt. It's called Revolver. This is just a standalone kind of bind up here. The cover caught my eye right away because it reminded me of like the bind up for The Walking Dead. Here's just like a normal scene, some people, and then the same people in this other kind of view of devastation and bloods on them and everything. So you're wondering what happens to these characters. And it's about a guy that every time he goes to sleep, he wakes up in a world where there's all this devastation and destruction and disease. And then when he goes back to sleep, he wakes up back in his same wherever he left off in his previous world. So he keeps going back and forth between those, and that's kind of represented. As you can see, the blue pages are let's see, that's his normal life, and the brown ones were where there's all this devastation and stuff. And along the bottom, there's little news clips that include the page number in the storyline, and then here, like the blue pages, is normal life. Might be weather, sports, things like that. But when you get on this side, it's all about, oh, so many people died in a fiery crash or in a flu epidemic, or it's all related to the story. And I thought that was really clever. I marked it down basically just for the artwork. I would have liked a little bit more crisper, because in some cases you don't see a lot of detail in the faces. They're pretty bland, kind of expressionless. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail in those faces to kind of bring the story out. So overall I gave this one 4 stars, but I definitely recommend it for the plot. Excuse me. The next one I read is sort of an adult post-apocalyptic book. It's part of the series, I believe a trilogy, and it's called Pure, and I believe you pronounce the author Julianna Baggott? I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce it. But a very intriguing world where there have been all these detonations that have exploded and caused horrific injuries, from scarring and burning to, worst of all, the fusings, where people have been fused to either other people, where they're known as groupies, or to the ground itself, where they're known as dust. Those are really interesting creatures. If they're fused to an animal, they're known as beasts, and other people are just fused to objects. Our main character, Precia, she is fused to a doll that she was carrying around as a young child, so she now has like a doll's head in place of her hand. So it's really intriguing. And then there's this dome that was there, and the people that were inside the dome were saved from these horrible injuries. They're known as Pures, because they have been untouched or unscarred. And our main character, who, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. Partridge. I want to keep saying Patrick Partridge. He lives within this dome. Kind of, his father was partially responsible for building this. And right around the time of these detonations, his mother had gone out to try and rescue people and bring him in, but she never returned. And, you know, she was apparently killed out there. But some things his father says leads him to believe she's not dead. So he leaves the dome to go in search of her. And Precia and Partridge's story sort of combine. And it was really intriguing, really well written, pretty good pacing. But there was a couple instances where other characters that show up, I had trouble understanding what their motivations were. So I had to kind of keep going back and forth and rereading passages. And for that really slowed down the story for me. And some things that left me a lot of questions unanswered. So there's the second book called Fuse, and I'm not certain if that has actually been released yet or not, but I will be continuing that to see where it goes. And I gave this one 3 stars. Another book I absolutely loved that I read this month. Definitely recommend this one. It's 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad. Very creepy. There's teens that win this lottery that they get to go up to the moon. And NASA's doing this sort of lunar launch to, as they say, it's sort of an anniversary, a return to the moon after the initial landing on there. But they're also in search of some kind of special element that's up there, and there's also some other weird thing that happened on the first lunar landing that they want to sort of investigate and see. I can't really say too much more, but they want to kind of send a team back up there to investigate and see if everything's sort of normal up there. There's a base called Darla 2, and they want to kind of, the population doesn't even know it exists, but now they've had to reveal it, and they say they're going up there to check on it, so make sure it's ready for future launches. And it was really intriguing, the use of teens in this mission to kind of generate interest in the population, so future populations will, future generations, you might say, will help continue to finance missions to the moon. And that's sort of their whole thing. But there's a lot of conspiracy things going on. A lot of creepy things happen to the kids before and once they reach the moon. And yeah, the cool pictures through here of lunar modules and the moon and where they land and all sorts of stuff. Even the even the station. Yeah, Darla too. There's a picture of like the map and layout of everything, but definitely recommend this one. It's super creepy. And right after I read this one, actually I gave this 5 stars, but right after I read this, I wanted to pick up the movie Apollo 18 because I wanted that same kind of creepy feel to a space movie or something. So definitely recommend the book. The movie wasn't too bad either. The next book I read is actually my first classic of the year, modern day classic. I love the cover, so I definitely picked this one up. And it's called We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. It's got a really super cool wraparound cover about it's a book about the Blackwood family. Most of the family was poisoned to death, drinking some sort of poison tea, and only Constance, her younger sister Merricat, the cat Jonas, and their uncle Julian survived, and they're sort of living in the Blackwood home, surrounded by a very large expansive property and surrounded by a wire fence, and they're kind of just holed up in there. Constance won't leave the home, Julian can't because of his infirmity, and the only one who can actually go to and from the village is Merricat. And she goes twice a week for supplies, where she encounters sort of the hostility of the villagers. They basically want this family gone, they don't trust them, it's like a murderer in their midst, and they also resent the fact that they've surrounded their property by a wire fence and kind of blocked off a shortcut that many of them took before. So lots of animosity going on, and then with this family, there's like hints of some strangeness throughout all 3 of them. You come to realize who the actual true murderer was, because Constance here was, she was brought up for, or charged with the murder of her family, but then she was acquitted. But as you're reading the story, you come to realize who the actual murderer is in this group. Her hints at sort of sorcery, magic, witchcraft, something going on with Merricat. Then there's a cousin that kind of comes to stay with the family on the pretense that he's there for them and everything and seeing if they need any help. But he's really after the family fortune. So it's just a really creepy feel to it, interesting mystery. Really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars. I have 2 more. One of them is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This is a book I won in a Goodreads giveaway. It's about a world sort of where, I guess you'd call it dystopian. It's a disease that has struck the children, and many of the children have died, except for those that didn't die developed these strange psychic abilities. And some are more powerful than others. The government decides that they are a danger to themselves and to society and round them up and send them to rehabilitation camps. And there they are sort of labeled into colors, blue and green being the less dangerous ones, and then yellow, orange, and eventually red being the most dangerous. Our main character, Ruby, is sent to Thurmond, one of these camps, and there she sees that it's not really a rehabilitation camp, it's virtually a prison camp. They're not allowed to talk around other guards, and they're very restricted. They're given harsh tasks to do. They're pretty much mistreated. When she arrives at the camp and they're doing the sorting, she kind of unintentionally manages to hide her abilities, and she's ranked as a green, but we come to learn she's far more powerful than a green. Eventually she escapes, she's on the run, she runs into 3 other characters, 3 other young children that have escaped from another camp, and their stories sort of merge, and they're trying to find East River, which is like a safe haven for kids, run by a boy known as the Slip Kid. And they're hoping that he can help them with things that they're both, all four of them kind of need. It's really intriguing, really well paced. All the characters are fleshed out very well. I like the interaction between Ruby, our main character, and Liam, the leader of the kids that she encounters later on. And the Slip Kid was very interesting too. Very well written. I love the story. I can't wait to see what happens next in it. I give it 5 stars. And my last book was written by Galaxy Craze. This is The Last Princess, sort of a YA post-apocalyptic book about a world that's went through a 17-day period of catastrophic natural disasters that has cut England off from the rest of the world. And it follows the Windsor family. There's a revolutionary group called as the New Guard, and Cornelius Hollister is in charge of the New Guard, and he wants to become the new king. He wants to be in charge. So he sets out managing to murder the king and queen and kidnap the oldest sister Mary and the youngest boy Jamie. Eliza, our main character, whose point of view we read the story from, is on the run, and she's trying to rescue her brother and sister, if they happen to still be alive, and to seek revenge on our main protagonist, Cornelius Hollister. I had trouble sympathizing with the main character in the beginning, not for the fact that, you know, she sees her mother poisoned to death and her father shot and everything, but because some of the things they do as a family, it seems they're very isolated from the situation of the people outside, and, you know, the starvation and things in there. It was hard to connect with that main character. I do much more towards the end as you see development within the character and her eyes kind of becoming open as to what's going on around her and, you know, the struggles of the people. And I liked her much more towards the end. But the book is so fast-paced that there's not much time for character development. There's not much time for world building. It's hinted at, but it's not described in enough detail for me to really flesh it out. It's sort of like you really have to imagine things on your own. And the main protagonist, Cornelius Hollister, seemed very one-dimensional. There's some scenes that just didn't seem to make sense. All that's sort of explained in my review for that book. And like I said, all these books that I've talked about, I'll put links to the reviews down below in the description bar so you can click on those. But overall, it was a bit of a disappointment. I will read book 2, but I'll probably just rent it from the library rather than buy it. And I gave this one 3 stars. So I realized after I finished making this video that I left out one of my books for this month, because I don't have a physical copy of it, but I'll throw up a picture of it. It's Thorn Abbey by Nancy Ohlin. Here it is. The book is sort of a contemporary reimagining of the classic novel by Daphne du Maurier entitled Rebecca, and I thought the author did a marvelous job of recreating Manderley in Thorn Abbey, the private academy that our main character goes to. All the characters from the original book were sort of recreated in this new version of it, and to me it worked very well. I could see that storyline following in this contemporary version of it. I thought the author did an excellent job, like I said, with the setting, with the characters, the surprise ending. Thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. So that brings my total of the books for this month to 15 books. So that's it, 14 books, and I'm not going to do TBR for the upcoming month because I don't like to be locked into specific titles. I'll just read what I'm going to read. I'm currently reading The Fifth Wave, as you know. I'm also reading an advanced copy of The House of Secrets by Chris Columbus and Ed Cidney. Pop that far in. I'm reading Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, and I'm also reading a graphic novel, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So, in the middle of 4 right now. We'll see how those go. And, yeah, hope you guys had a good reading month. Let me know what you read down below, what you plan on reading for the next month, if you know that ahead of time. And we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.